So let's go on. So Lifewise Academy. So last Thursday, I have become more and more involved with Lifewise Academy. I think a week or two, I may have sent a link through email on their short movie, about an hour and 6 minutes long, that is on Angel Studios app. And I had the pleasure and the honor of meeting Joel. You see him up there on the top picture. Um, and I was asking about Nussmeier because Joel's about 6'6", every bit of 290, 300 pounds. Doesn't look like, but he's a monster, but a gentle giant. He played defensive end for Ohio State on their championship team in 2004. So he's a relatively young man, but he is the catalyst. He is a energizer bunny, and he really exploded this whole concept. And there on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the off school grounds during school hours Bible instruction. And folks, this has been going like wildfire throughout the United States. And we'll go through some stats right now because I think it's so important for us. Um, no offense to you younger guys out there or gals out there, but for us mature Christians in our societies, in our communities, to really go out because it starts with going to school districts and actually to some of the House representatives in your respective capitals, whatever state you may be, and starting a process. And it all starts grassroots. Parents, usually from churches, who fill out or sign who sign documents or will sign a petition to the state house in their capitals to start and mandate an off school grounds during school hours Bible instruction. And the reason I have that little it's got a cadence to it, right? Those are legal terms of art which were used in a 1952 United States Supreme Court decision that allows off school grounds during school hours Bible instruction. So that's what I have been starting to teach here in North Atlanta, about a half hour north of Atlanta, in some of their public schools. I've been teaching, I've referred to the juniors and seniors I've been teaching. We've been going through Mere Christianity, and now we're going through Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. But nonetheless, um, one, and it's kind of not weird how God works. God works for a reason. Everything is within His plan. But when I went to this dinner last Thursday, that's pretty much when Valerie got her news about this life-changing event. But in any way, nothing to do with health. It's a job issue. But in any way, Joel was telling me, Scott, I'm so glad what you're doing down in closer to Atlanta. That was about an hour drive for me from where I am now. And during traffic, make that 2 hours. But nonetheless, I love what I did. He says, Scott, I love what you're doing, but we have that area saturated. And what we really need now is North Georgia to be break the seal up there and get schools open up there and get people like you coming in and teaching kids. And he really loved my concentration in apologetics and hermeneutics like we're doing right now. Maybe drill down a little bit, obviously for younger folks. And I said, Joel, you're not going to believe this, but the news I got, my wife and I got earlier today, this was last Thursday. Matter of fact, it hit when we were teaching, so maybe I seemed a little off while I was teaching last Thursday. He said, I would love for you to go up to North Georgia. I know that's so far for you. I said, Joel, we just got news that we're going up to that area. No kidding, folks. No kidding. So I said, wow, wow, wow. And then we launched into, hey, Joel, up on your maps. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit. I'm so excited about this, but nervous and scared at the same time. But look at the map there on your screen. See those blue states? Those are states that do not have a LifeWise Academy program. And what do you see down there on the Gulf South? Which is ironic because that's usually the Bible Belt, Louisiana. So, Joel, what's going on in Louisiana? He goes, I'm glad you asked. He goes, because Joel, I have some people in Louisiana. I'm from Louisiana that can help out. He goes, wow, that's incredible. Let's talk about that. And I said, and Barry, I hate to tell you, I'll use your name. So there you go. So Barry, you may know, he said, I am working with one guy, but he's not a representative there anymore. A guy named Tony Perkins. I'm not sure, Barry, if you know Tony Perkins, but nonetheless, we'll talk later. Um, he said, I'm working with Tony, but I really need help in Louisiana to get launched. I said, let's do it, brother. So I'm going to be talking to him hopefully tomorrow or Monday about Louisiana. But what's exciting is that he is now in 34, 35. Louisiana will be the 35th state. And if you go through some of the numbers on the left-hand side of your screen as you're looking at it, I know you can't see it, but that says schools served. So the schools served in 2018, there were only two schools that were served, and those were in Ohio, where Joel is from. And Tess, who's on with us, is from Ohio. And by the way, again, to reiterate, Tess was kind of a matchmaker between Joel and myself. Because when I was teaching the kids that I'm doing in North Atlanta, I was just going through the local director in Georgia, and Joel has exploded this so much, he really can't get hands on. So this was a incredible God incident that Tess has Joel as one of the church members in her church. And by the way, shout out Tess. Yeah, we talked about uh, Tess's participation in this class and Tess's, I guess, co-membership with Joel in the church in Ohio. So that was the genesis of me getting to meet Joel, even though I was teaching in one of his districts. But nonetheless, so Joel comes in about 2018, 2019 or so. In 2019, there's five schools still in Ohio. And in 2020, he starts to branch out. And in 2020, there's eight schools. Now, when I say schools, I mean school districts. And in 2021, there's 36 school districts in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois. He started to branch out into the Midwest. But as you go on the bottom of your screen here to the right-hand side, I'm at the left-hand side for first, you'll see the confirmed schools. So in 2022, his goal was 84 school districts, and guess what he had? 133 actual school districts. In 2024, his goal was 425 school districts. The actual was 585 districts. And then last year, folks, last year, his goal was 650 districts, over 1,000 actual districts are now being served. Look at that incredible growth. And again, Joel came in about 2018, 2019. He really started to launch in about 2020. It has been going on like gangbusters. So right now, Lifewise Academy teaches 60,000 students in public schools in those 34 states. However, there are 99,000 school districts. 99,000 school districts. So Joel right now or Lifewise Academy is in 13,000 school districts. So a lot of work still to be done in the kingdom. Um, and this statistic really surprised me. There are over 92% of kids in U.S. public schools. 92% in US public schools, and that's about 50 million kids. So there's a lot of work to be done. Um, and I am just so excited that the timing of what's going on with Valerie and myself puts me or places me in a in a crop that needs to be harvested up in North Georgia. And I'm just so glad, and I hope I can help. Joel, Barry, and Tess has also offered to help us. Maybe some of you guys are in Louisiana. We'll have a separate meeting on that with Joel. So I see Tess's hand up. So Tess.
She was
She was
just
clapping.
she was clapping.
Oh,
I
oh,
was
okay.
just clapping.
Yeah, it was like what's that old Buddhist? I just saw one hand waving. What's that Buddhist saying? The sound of one hand clapping. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so Tess, thank you again. I could go on for the rest of what I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes on this. But guys, uh, just Google LifeWise Academy, and you're just going to see this incredible growth. And I'm telling you, this to me, this is really one of the top, probably three evangelical um, places we need to focus in. Churches, obviously, United States at large, but I was so emboldened by this meeting. They were expecting maybe 50 people. Now, obviously, this was set up as a donor type event. They had over 285 people show up. They had to add shares as an event. I'm trying to get him to do the same type of thing in Louisiana. And again, I know Barry, your plate is so full and you do so much, but we'll talk about it later. But again, I think he would be an incredible speaker at one of your events. Not only to tell his testimony, and he's got an incredible testimony, by the way, but also to help facilitate and really start to propagate LifeWise Academy in that lonely little blue state on the south there, which kind of surprised me. So look at the map now. The Northeast, pretty much New England. I can kind of understand that. New Hampshire. So when I lived up in Ohio, maybe Tess can attest to this. Valerie and I love driving through New England to go to Lake Placid to do some skiing. And you'd always go through Vermont, which is very, very liberal. You get to New Hampshire, and New Hampshire felt like Louisiana of New England. Very, very conservative, um, churches everywhere. So if you look, there is actually a LifeWise Academy footprint in New Hampshire, but everything else around is a sea of blue. But to see Louisiana, and I didn't have time to ask Joel that what were the impediments in Louisiana. But nonetheless, so folks, let's work on that. So any questions, comments on
Yeah, just
Lifeway?
a question,
Yep.
Scott, is what's their process if a school allows you on the grounds, that's okay. But if they don't, they're forced to allow you to have an off ground. So you could be on grounds teaching as long as the school allows it.
Great question. Because as you can imagine, Dave, most public schools won't allow it. Some do. And when and if they do, that cuts down their cost because they get to share school property space. But one of the problems, not a problem, but one of the issues has they have to either find a local church that's close by because they have to actually transport the students. And he's got these big red buses, by the way, and I meant to put a picture up. So they'll bus the students from the school to a local church. And what really surprised me, Joel didn't really have time to drill down, but one of Joel's national directors, I was able to talk more in depth. He says, Scott, you be surprised the amount of churches who won't allow us to even come on their campuses
Yeah.
for different reasons. So then they have to either build a facility or they have to rent out a facility, and that costs money.
Yeah.
So about over 75% of their school rooms are going to be either in a church or another structure they either build, lease, or rent out. Where I teach down in North Atlanta, it's a mega church, not Andy Stanley. Somebody asked me that. Not Andy Stanley's church. It's a mega church, and their classrooms look like some of my college classrooms I went to with incredible AV. But yeah, it's mostly going to be off school. Um, there's very few that do allow that. The schools in Ohio, some of those schools allow them to stay in the school building and teach.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Scott,
that
this is
yeah,
Tess. I was just going to add for Dave's question that there's a little bit of mix here in Ohio. Ohio, obviously, because they started here, it is mature, more mature, the network of schools that are participating, but it's a mix. I mean, they've actually even built
mhm,
walkways where they've built property that is adjacent to the school, and then they've built landscaping and walkways for the children to be able to walk from one property over to the property where they meet. I mean, so they find solutions to meet the school needs, and they've either built, rented, constructed. They've done a lot of different solutions for the particular school district that they're, once they get in there, they just make it work, you know.
correct.
The next question is, what's the process? Is the school district have the authority on their own, or does it have to come through legislative approval to do it? Because where
It's
I'm
already
heading
in
here,
legislation. Yeah.
I have a first cousin that was a senator in Louisiana for 30 years, and he's retired now. But if it's at the legislative standpoint, I can reach out to him. But if it's not, I'm not going to reach out to him. So,
So here's and Tess is right. So a lot of school districts acquiesce without a fight. However, some districts in other states, some parents of agnostic or secular kids who don't want to be even, they say, influenced by the kids coming back into the school after going off school grounds, they'll sue. And when they sue, it becomes a case in controversy. And then the state legislature comes in and has to usually override that with a state mandate. But there's federal preemption issues going on right there. Sometimes it can get nasty, and it becomes a legal fight. But Tess is right. Some school districts will just say, sure, no problem. But if they get sued, then it becomes an issue. And I think that's what's going on in Louisiana, but I couldn't really talk that much. But yeah, there's still a lot of pushback on this. So,
Yeah, and
uh,
if I could add, Scott, Joel started this based on a loophole in the Supreme Court ruling in regards to Bible study in the schools. It specifically states in the video that we shared the link to goes into greater detail about this. But the loophole is that it doesn't say that you can't have Bible study, but it says it has to be off school grounds. And
right,
so that's where he kind of built this ministry is okay, well, if it's off school grounds, then um we will find adjacent property or a place for the kids to go, and then we will bus them to this, and then it allows for during school hours, they can have Bible instruction.
correct.
So it's a loophole in the earlier Supreme Court judge or the ruling, and he's leveraged that to be able to build this ministry.
so
That's why, and Tess, that's why on your screen that you see right there, those three phrases are legal terms of art that have to be really used off school grounds, during school hours, in Bible instruction. Um, But so that was Zorak versus New York, and I think it was 1952. And I actually went back in one of my old law books and I saw a small reference to it. But yeah, so Tess is right. That's what Joel is using. Part of the problem, again, is that what happens is that some of the kids who get Bible instruction off school grounds, who are bused back into, let's say, the next hour is going to be mathematics. And I go to math class, and as young kids do, oh, so what did you do? Hey, little Johnny, little Susie, what did you do for that 1 hour when I was in gym or pottery making, whatever it is? Well, I learned about Jesus. And that kid goes home and says, oh, I heard about Jesus. I learned about Jesus. That parent, agnostic, atheist, whatever, then goes to the school board and says, what is going on here? And the school board said, what? And that they're getting problems with that right now. And that causes a case and controversy. But that's an argument for another time. That's very few and far between, by the way. But as we all know, you get the ACLU will come in and represent the parent of the child who heard about Jesus, whose parents don't even want to hear anything about Christianity in school. And so Joel's got a team of lawyers who help crush that. But anytime you get a Christian organization such as this exploding as it is, you're going to get ACLU and other secular organizations coming in to try to, gum up the works, take a cog out of the wheel, to try to wreck the incredible train that's going through the kingdom. So, yeah.
There,
So,
and then if
uh,
I could add,
sure.
Scott, too, there are families that are being brought to Jesus because of the children that are attending these Bible instructions off school grounds in this program. They're going home, they're going back to school, they're talking about what they're learning. And as much as there may be some that are fighting it, there are other families that are actually coming to know Christ. It is a ministry that is very powerful.
Yes, to test the positives outweigh the negatives by a train load. I'll use that analogy again. Um, but again, it just takes, and we see that in our pop culture now. Anything that Christians try to do, oh, if you use the J word, oh my, and Collins, I'm going to say this literally, oh my God, you can't use God's name. But so in any way, this has been steamrolling, and as Tess has said, families have been coming to Christ and getting baptized in the Lord's name because of this. So it's an exponential effect that's going on. So I highly recommend, and I think you can get the Angel app for a 30-day or 15-day trial period. And it's pretty easy. I don't think you even have to put in a credit card, but I highly recommend to get the Angel app because then you can access the movie. And Tess, it's Off School Grounds, I think, is the name of the movie, right?
That is correct. Off school
Okay.
grounds. Mhm.
And as Tess was saying, you'll actually see that one construct of the school and the walkway being built into this beautiful building where they teach Bible instruction. But it'll give you, and it's a very good produced movie. So a little humor injected in there, but the production, it's not boring. Trust me, the hour and 7 minutes will go by and it'll change your view of Bible instruction in public schools.
Yeah, my,
So,
my
uh,
question, Scott, is this, is what is, where are you in Louisiana? And if you want me to reach out, I will. I don't know that he'll have any interest to get involved in it or whatsoever. I don't even, I know he goes to church, but doesn't mean he wants to get involved. So that was my only question, and I don't want to go to him cold. So if there's a process already started in Louisiana and they're hitting a roadblock, then that's something maybe he would be willing to, because he has friends all over. I mean, he's retired after about 20 years in senator, whatever it was.
okay,
So he still knows them all. Just let me know, not right now. Let's go ahead and move forward. I don't want to bog it down, but I would, if I can help, I'll try. That's all I'm saying.
sure. So to answer your question, Dave, I will know the particulars on that, and I would know how far the can's been kicked down the road on this. I'll know that tomorrow and or Monday, and I will get together with you and
Oh,
Barry and with Tess.
okay.
So we can go forward. But I'm just excited about this. And by the way, Joel does have a gospel-centered program that's plug and play. So there is a consistent teaching series in all 34, 35 states. Um, I come in and do more of a like what we're doing right now, but obviously pare down to high school and eventually elementary kids. I'm kind of like a guest speaker that comes in and kind of gives them a little twist aside from, and obviously in elementary school, it's going to be like your traditional Sunday Bible studies for kids, but for the high school students, it's a little bit more um, um, challenging. And a lot of it is going to do with how to interact with your fellow students. So a lot of it that he wants to start to try to get into some abortion type issues, but he's staying away from that right now when it comes to 17, 18-year-old kids in high school. He's staying away from that for good reason. But nonetheless, we can at least teach what Jesus teaches about um, celibacy and marriage and without going there yet. All right, so I'm
Hey,
excited about,
Scott.
yes,
Scott,
ma'am. Yeah,
first of all, through Michael Sprague, we have good, solid relationships with politicians. Um,
right, right.
secondly, what can we do for you?
Hey, don't worry about me right now. Pray, pray for me. Just so what do they say? I think one of the top three, what's the word? My mind is like mush this morning. Stressors in life, death in the family, of course, moving, job, job issues. Well, I'm going through two of those right now. Uh, but I'm telling you right now, I'm just like so excited to get started up in North Georgia because it needs it badly. Help out with Louisiana and continue my ministry that I'm doing right now. You know, God has been so good. And every day I wake up since this happened, Val and I see, wow, 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 this is starting to fall in place. Obviously, it's not going to happen in 1 week, but we've learned patience. We learned God's timing. So just pray for patience and pray for us to, look at the minutia and we see God there. And just pray for, God's blessings on us as we further his kingdom. So I guess, well, I don't want to take up too much time right now. Maybe we'll talk about this later on, but what Val wants to do will enable me to use my chaplaincy hat and what I do here with a new business that she's trying to get into. So I'll just leave it at that. So just pray for me and pray for Val that we stay on God's path that He's laying out for us. And I tell people sometimes when God has a path for us, we need to look brick by brick, stone by stone. If you guys ever built your own backyard deck, you build stones to that deck to get to your relaxation place. And sometimes it's tiring. The stones are heavy. You got to place it, right? And you got to move on from one stone to one stone to get to that finished product. Sometimes God will lay out the road for you and it's easy sailing. No, great. But sometimes it's stone by stone by stone by stone, and you got to stay on that stone until you carve out the ground and the grass and place a other stone. But at least you're seeing his work there. So that's kind of the process that we've learned to take right now. So just pray for that, and I really appreciate your prayers and your support. So at least, and thank you for your patience in this, but I really do think this LifeWise Academy, the more I become ensconced into it, the more I participate into it, the more I see that this is true. This is a true battleground. in God's kingdom to really reach this young this young generation, and it needs to start in schools. So just pray for that. And guys, so Dave and Barry, Tess, I'll get back with you guys either Friday and or Monday when I find out from Joel and from others. So thank you for your patience in that. Thank you for your support. And I highly recommend getting onto Angel app or the Angel Network and looking at Off School Grounds movie. All right. Before we get into archaeological biblical discovery Thursday, any last minute questions or comments on LifeWise? Okay. So I highly recommend this one source, and I think I have shared this with this group. I know I have shared it with other groups, but it's a great resource. It's called Associates for Biblical Research. And there's a website. Just go ahead and Google that, and they'll send you out a free newsletter, usually every month or 6 weeks. They're highly vetted out archaeological experts in biblical discoveries and digging for the truth. That's their channel. They have a YouTube channel, which I also highly recommend. Digging for the truth. Um, the Book of Esther. I- Even in seminary, we didn't really hardly even touch this in my Old Testament classes. The Book of Esther kind of gets, I guess, shelved a little bit, pun intended. But this is an incredible new discoveries, new studies on the historicity of the Book of Esther. So if you want to go on the YouTube channel, it's called Episode 282. The Book of Esther, amongst even academic biblical scholar circles, tends to be, oh, well, that really is a book of legend and or myth. But it couldn't be the furthest from the truth. So there's an archaeological expert, Brian Wendell. I met Brian at some conferences. He and his other co-archaeological, these guys are out there with spade and shovel, by the way. They're not just academics sitting in a university library. So these guys are the real deal. They go ahead and really construct and deconstruct the Book of Esther to show that she really was a historical Jewish queen at the time of King Xerxes. And I think most of us know the backstory, the Book of Esther. Don't have time to really drill down on that, pun intended. But I highly recommend this to really get you back up to the historicity and the authenticity of the Book of Esther. So, episode 282 on the ABR YouTube channel. It made me go back and read the Book of Esther again, by the way. Um, Sergius Paulus, an archaeological biography. This stone right here was found in the Tiber River amongst other ruins about 1877. But the reason it's back in the news in Christian circles is because this was primarily looked to be a forgery or a fake. Until recently, there's been new studies on it, and now the consensus is that it is accurate and it does show us or tend to show us and prove that Sergius Paulus was a proconsul at the time of the book of Acts. And it does prove that there was a proconsul called Sergio Paulus. That is described in Acts 13. Anyone recall why Sergio Paulus was so important in Paul and Barnabas's mission? If you recall in Acts 13, Sergio Paulus was a Gentile Roman ruler who was evangelized by Paul and Barnabas because there was a pseudo Jesus called Bar Jesus, a magician, who was trying to evangelize, and I say evangelize in quotes, Sergio Paulus, but Barnabas and Paul come in and say, no, 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 that is a false prophet. Let me tell you about the real Jesus. And Sergio Paulus, a Roman proconsul, accepted Christ. Um, and you can read about that from Acts 13. Yeah, Acts 13. It's a fascinating encounter. This proves, or tends to prove, and we're starting to now find out it's more and more accurately probably is a confirmation that Sergio Paulus lived at that time and was proconsul. So Acts 13 looks to be an accurate depiction of this character who's a real historical figure. So go back and read Acts 13, you'll see that encounter. So this is a really good example of a forgery or fraudulent type of discovery that now has been reanalyzed and found to be probably accurate and dispositive of a Roman proconsul by this name who was evangelized in the area, right, by Paul and Barnabas. So incredible. Such like the Shroud of Turin, that at first you may know, oh, it's a fraud. It was a 14th century forgery. It's being re-examined now. And actually, the Vatican, I heard the Vatican is about to release it again for new studies. So on the left there, you'll see, and Collins, again, thank you for this reminder. This came out on Fox News, the Fox News feeder that you get on the Fox News app. New book on archaeological evidence for Jesus rockets to top of bestseller list. I made an allusion to this earlier. So this guy you see here, a guy named Dr. Jeremiah Johnston, he is a New Testament scholar who does a lot of archaeological studies. He's not an archaeological expert per se, but his book is now out there in mainstream and it's on a historical evidence for Jesus. So there you can read a little note there on the bottom. And he has 10 historical findings, as you see, that bring us face to face with the historical Jesus. Um, I was asked the other day, so what are those 10 discoveries? We don't have time to drill down in that. By the way, we have talked about all these discoveries that I have peppered through our Thursdays together for the last 2 years. But the biggies are going to be, of course, the Shroud of Turin that he talks about, the James ossuary, and we actually discussed this months ago. Yes, the brother of Jesus, who was the head of the Jerusalem church, who was martyred, by the way. Uh, there was a discovery of his ossuary. An ossuary is a burial box that you put your bones in. That has pretty much been accepted to be authentic by most biblical scholars and New Testament scholars. So the James ossuary he talks about, the Magdalene papyrus. We need to be careful when we start studying archaeological discoveries, findings. Dr. Johnson talks about the Magdalene Papyrus. That has been a very controversial discovery. The Magdalene Papyrus is that it was a purported writing by Mary Magdalene. In academic circles, it's most believe it's a forgery. Nonetheless, he includes it in his book. The pilot stone he talks about. The pilot stone has been an authenticated stone to show us that Pontius Pilate indeed was a Roman prefect at the time of Jesus. That has been locked down. That was discovered in 1964, 1966. But since 64 to about 1990, 1992, there was most scholars said that was a fake. It has been now authenticated. It's the real deal. The Pool of Shalom, we talked about that. That's been in the news for the last year or so, and he goes on with other discoveries. The point of the book is that now we have books like this coming into mainstream New York Times bestseller list Amazon list. So that's a wow movement because now we're starting to see what we're studying, folks, amongst us, go out into the kingdom at large. So I guess I'm a little biased, but the book on the right, I just came out, the Essential Archaeological Guide to Bible Lands. So I highly recommend that book that just came out. And Dr. Kennedy, I actually referenced this book months ago or weeks ago. Dr. Kennedy himself has his archaeological discoveries of Jesus. That's a more academic, more esoteric type of book. It would not tend well to a public at large. So that's why I'm excited to see this one book by Jeremiah Johnson that has the top 10 discoveries about Jesus on an archaeological plane. It's simple, it's concise, but that's the point. At least it gets out there so people can get interested and they go to books like Dr. Titus Kennedy that you see right there. Um, this came on my feed yesterday. And we talked about this, but I think it's important. I want to share this. Maybe some of you have seen this. A researcher believes that Noah's Ark found in Turkey after new underground scans. If you see that picture right there, we have discussed this. That's called the Darupanar impression in present day Turkey. Back in the late 50s, a Turkish Air Force pilot was flying over this area. He knew the Torah, he knew the story of Noah's Ark, and he took a picture of this. It has been studied, it's been vetted by many, many different groups, and has been declared to be just a anomaly, a geographic anomaly. It's been prodded, it's been probed by many experts. This is an example of being careful of the sources and news stories we see about Noah's Ark, about the Ark of the Covenant, about Jesus's chalice or cup he used at the Last Supper. Um, this is a guy named Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones calls himself an archaeologist, spelled A-R-K-ologist. He is not an archaeologist. He is not an archaeological expert. He's also been tied with a guy named Ron Wyatt, who has been loosey-goosey with some of his findings of Exodus, the crossing in the book of Exodus, the Red Sea crossing, discovering, or think he discovered the Ark of the Covenant. So Dr. Jones, well, no, he's not a doctor, has gone in and now declares he has new evidence that he found Noah's Ark. Take that with a grain of salt. However, I would love to have definitive evidence of finding Noah's Ark, but is that going to change our faith? No, of course not. The fact that we can't find it means, does it mean it doesn't happen? Of course not. The way the wood that was used, a type of gopher wood that was used, either would have rotted long ago, but there's also biblical anecdotal evidence that Noah and the new population around that area, which would have grown, would have used that wood for buildings anyway. So this is just an example of be careful, vet your sources before you start to go out and say Noah's Ark's been found. So I use that as a prime example. Um, two books on New Testament dating. I did that and I meant to put the books up. Hey, folks, this is exciting. Now, as you well know, most scholars, I shouldn't say most scholars, most secular scholars will put the book of Mark, the Gospel of Mark, um, pretty early on, but not until, maybe 65 to 70-ish. That's okay. But they get to Matthew and Luke and they put that well beyond 70 AD. And the reason 70 AD becomes a cutoff point is because that's when the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans. There's been these new studies now to show that all the Gospels probably were actually written before 70 AD. And the two books are, I meant to put it up there to have time in case you want to really look at this even in further detail. It's called Rethinking the Dates of the New Testament. Rethinking the Dates of the New Testament by Jonathan Berner, Berner. And another book called Redating the New Testament by a scholar named John Robinson. Those are relatively new books that have come out that argue emphatically on a scholarly level now, which I'm kind of glad that we have missed a boat for the last hundreds of years, and that the synoptic gospels had to be probably were written before 70 AD, which throws a whole new aspect on the timeline between Jesus's crucifixion and the first gospel manuscripts we see. So again, no, I'm sorry, rethinking the dates of the New Testament by Berner and redating the Testament by John Robinson. I highly recommend those books. We don't have time to really drill down into that right now, but I want to throw out those new sources. I participated in a Sunday afternoon um, study with some guys that I know out of Liberty University and Wesleyan University, and they're academic biblical scholar nerds. But they were so excited about these two new books, so that's where I get my disclosure to you guys on this. All right, so questions, comments on anything we've talked about these archaeological discoveries? All right. Jesus, a teacher and miracle worker. Yes, we finally get to the substantive matter at hand. And we've been talking about teaching traits of Jesus, his authoritative character, which we talked a lot about the last 2 weeks, his clash with the scribes and with the Pharisees. So today I want to get into his wisdom character. And I'm now glancing over at my time, 9:24. I don't really want to only spend 5 minutes. So if you guys will be patient, maybe what we'll do next week is start with his wisdom character, and it's real short. So I'll start with his wisdom character. We'll go through that, and I really want to hone in for at least 10, 15 minutes on the Sermon of the Mount and that whole honor shame system that was so crucial and so important for Jewish culture at the time of Jesus, and how Jesus completely turns that around 180 on its head. And that's why it was so radical. And then, real quickly, 5 minutes each on the radical character and occasional character, and we'll get into Jesus's miracles. And yes, we're going to talk about and study and analyze not only the supernatural aspects of Jesus's miracles, which are important for his deity and also important for his messiahship, because his miracles also are dispositive of prophecy that we see in Old Testament, but we also see miracles being occurred to show his supernatural, actual power that he has, that only a creator God, only a God who transcends time, space, and matter can do. So it's very important to have those distinctions, and we'll go through that. So, with that said, I guess we'll just leave a little early today, unless we have questions or comments.
I've got just a comment that's
Uh-huh.
fresh on my mind that because you talk about miracle workers and miracles, and sometimes we don't realize that miracles occur today. It may not be miracles from a person, but miracles occur constantly. And I had an example yesterday that blew me away that I'm sharing with our fellowship here.
Love it.
Is
You go
I
ahead.
have a plumber. He's probably in his 50th years old. Very rough life. He's went through a divorce, His father died and had him cremated, very depressed in 2017. Okay, this happened in 2017. Uh, he had kids and all that, and he was just at the bottom of the barrel. He took his father and had the cremation remains, and he took it to go scatter it. And he scattered his father's remains out in a park area, and then he pulled out a 9 millimeter. I said, God, forgive me. Stuck it in his head, made sure a bullet was in the chamber, cocked it, click. He said, what? There's an indention in the cap of the 9 millimeter. Did go off.
The firing pin hit it and it didn't go.
It did not go off.
Wow.
He just, he knew it was God. And his whole life changed. His whole life changed. He's the most godly person you ever want to meet today. He's very active in church. And so you talk about miracles. That's a miracle of
Brother,
miracles we don't even realize. And that's a testimony of a plumber.
And
Okay.
the
that
interesting thing is he's speaking the gospel into every home he walks into. He can't keep
Yeah,
that, he cannot keep it out
absolutely.
of his vocabulary. So everything he says is speaking the gospel to every home he's going into.
he needs to do some type of like YouTube, um, uh, something I'm telling you
Doing what he
I'm
needs
blown
to
away.
do.
I mean hey, that's a bad phrase to say when you're blown away, but
I
I,
hear you.
that's so impactful. And I'm telling you, testimonies like that. I mean, I can preach and teach all day about what we're doing right now, but that alone, that 1 minute story that you told us, Dave, to me is more important than, well, I shouldn't say more important, but you know what I mean. More impactful for people out there who are sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
And I we all have new lens, but you don't have to have a new lens for that. That's why it's so powerful. And just knowing I'm also an NRA instructor, it's like that just doesn't happen. That's how that cartridge did not go off. Like, oh, the firing pin didn't hit. No, the fire, you said the
Yeah,
indentation into the primer.
he did. He
That
kept it.
is a true miracle. That
Right.
is a true miracle.
Right.
Um, I'd love to I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to interact with him if he so, chooses, but please. Um, wow, wow, wow. And
I'll talk to him and see. But anyway, I'm just going to ask him, has he shared this with others and would he publicly share it? Because
he
that's the question. And I'm not mentioning his name, obviously, right now.
no, no,
Not good.
no, no, no.
Anyway, I
So
found it an interesting miracle when you get into miracle working. So something you can use because you don't no name here, but you can use it as you share. So
so
that's why I gave it to you.
no, I do. So he needs to carry around, and obviously the bullet didn't discharge, so he's got the whole cartridge right there with the bullet, the brass, the case, and he needs to carry that around and show and tell when he does a testimony. And that's the first thing I would do is just have a picture of the actual cartridge, the bullet, the case, and then show a picture of the indentation. That's powerful.
He
That's
said he didn't keep the cartridge.
uh-huh.
He couldn't find it after, I guess the emotional, he doesn't know. He
Sure,
took it out and looked at it and anyway, he said
of course.
he wished he'd have kept it. So,
So, in line with that, on the bottom there, I think that's one of the better books on Jesus and his miracles. Jesus, the miracle worker. You see it right there. Highly recommend that. And Dave, you made a comment. Yeah, there are some Christians who believe what's called cessationist. In other words, miracles pretty much stopped after the apostolic age.
right.
Um, I, that's a minority, thank goodness, in the Christian academic circles. But there are a lot of churches there who believe that no miracles stopped or ceased after the apostolic age. after the last apostle died. So, no, I see those small miracles, huge in your face miracles, like you just said, Dave. And we really need to tune in on those. So, with that said, anything else anyone want to share?
I think Brother Johnny might have been waiting.
Brother Johnny, floor is
What?
yours. Screen is yours.
Well, I was kind of I'm hesitant to ask the question, but at least I can share my thoughts. So it's about the LifeWise.
Mhm.
So I got an email, I went online, and I was specifically looking for the curriculum. And I got general knowledge, say it's taught the Bible within 5 years on the various age levels.
Mhm.
And and it is an elective for any student that want to attend this class because it is a free period, that they can choose to take. If
Correct.
you when you're doing in school, uh, and I remember being actively part of the Good News Club, and they said no, it's a little different, but it all of them go back to one thing that I hear from the church groups is that are they saying that we failed and we need to get on board? In other words, we have supposedly Sunday school with 99% of the church population does not attend,
Right. Correct. Yeah.
y- you know. So I'm not a start new person. You, you know what I mean? I like to build on what's already there. And I specifically remember going through school that it wasn't a Bible teaching, it was that the teachers were allowed to do the Lord's Prayer at the start of the school, but there was never a class specifically at any time on the Bible.
Mhm.
I agree with the approach. I'm glad Tess raised the hand because that's why I wanted her opinion to help me with my thinking. Come on, Tess, please do.
Johnny, you're fine. So, I'm going to age myself here. I grew up in Ohio, Hardington Lincoln High School, Morrow County, just north of Columbus. And I will tell you that in middle school, elementary school, middle school, we had Bible study sessions that we could attend in school and bring our Bibles to school with us and meet ahead of classes. It was never, Bible study was never a curriculum that was delivered by the school, but it was the ability to bring my Bible with me to school and meet other faith-filled, students, and we could have a Bible study session together, whether it was early in the morning, after school, or during lunch or whatever. Whenever that changed, we were not allowed to even bring Bibles to school at the time I was in high school. If you
So,
were caught bringing a Bible to school, you were reprimanded. So I believe that is the change that occurred. It wasn't necessarily that the school was offering the study, but we had the freedom and the ability to be able to bring our Bibles and to study it if we chose to. Where once that happened, it was removed from the school and then it became a subject and a text that violated school conditions, and you could get in trouble for carrying a Bible. And that's how far our system went. I'm delighted to see that someone dove into the law enough to find a loophole to be able to at least bring the children to the Bible during school hours, because frankly, that's where our children are at from the time that they start school until they graduate from high school. They're in school more than we really have them even in our homes. And so being able to bring the children to the Bible and to that instruction, I think is just a wonderful opportunity for families,
Yeah.
children
Well,
and families.
one thing I wanted to say for Brother Johnny, though, if you think about these kids, a kid depends on their parents to get them to Sunday school. And if their parents aren't going to do that, and if they're not finding a neighbor or somebody that will take them, they're kind of limited. So I guess this offers an opportunity to
Yeah.
people.
And I'm going to say this before we turn it over to Brother Johnny. To answer your question, frankly, in my opinion, Brother Johnny, yes, the church has failed.
Yeah.
They failed. And the reason they failed is because this movement happened and nobody opposed it. It's against, to me, you have the civil right to bring anything you want to school. And we didn't do that. We just, we were silent about it. We all were. Did church fail? Yeah. Did I fail? Yes. We all failed because we let a liberal movement go on and we were afraid to address it. Go ahead, Brother John.
Thank you, Dave.
Well, and I think, Dave, we were very conservative. We did, I think the culture of our country did not know how far this was going to go.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah. I,
they did
I
not know how much restriction was going to happen, and then how it went from just restricting to now it is, it's almost like the enemy, um,
Well,
and
it
we're
is the
living in
enemy.
that a couple generations later.
so it kind of evolved, like you're saying. I didn't know they restricted the Bible because we always had what they call probably 10 years ago, meet me at the pole. So when they had lunchtime, you get a student led Bible prayer, small Bible study during lunch at the pole. So, but that kind of went away. But thank you, Tess. You definitely gave me the historical background. And thank you, Dave, for being honest. I love it.
Colin's got his hands raised.
Shifting gears now to the Saints. If you have any friends that are from Britain or Ukraine or named George, wish them a happy St. George's Day. And if you're interested in a little history, George is an interesting historical character and would expand your appreciation for what he did in his time. And that also applies to any Greek folks that you might know. The Greeks love St. George.
Okay. I guess it's time, Scott. So
Yeah. I don't want to go too much, but I'd love to lively discussion. So again, next week we'll get back to the traditional study, and we'll do Jesus. We'll really get launched into Jesus as a miracle worker. And I'm telling you guys, it's gonna be fascinating. It's gonna be incredible. So just hang on to your hats while we go through that because it's gonna be a whirlwind. All right, guys. So thanks for your support, for your prayers. Just pray for us in this we're juggling literally and figuratively. So just pray for us, and I'll see you guys next Thursday. Love you.